Rachel here again. This is the next video in our series, Finding Your Way with Charlotte Mason's 20 Principles. Be sure to click through so that you can watch the next video by Amy Bodkin, our special needs consultant over at A Charlotte Mason Plenary. She's a wealth of information and she has great insights about homeschooling with special needs. Now, also be sure to please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that little bell, because the little bell will give you notifications every time a new video is published. I hope you enjoy Finding Your Way with Charlotte Mason's 20 Principles. Hello there, I'm Rachel with the Charlotte Mason Plenary. Thank you for joining me again today for another video in our series of Finding Your Way with Charlotte Mason's 20 Principles. Today we're going to talk about Principles 5 and 6, in that Principle 5 is kind of like a holding card for the 3 principles that come after it. And it reads, we are limited to 3 educational instruments: the atmosphere of environment, the discipline of habit, and the presentation of living ideas. The PNEU motto is education is an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. Now that last line is one of Charlotte Mason's most famous phrases because it speaks to people. It has this idea that education can be so much more than what we find in our current public school system. It has this hope attached to it, the hope that maybe we can find an education that is nourishing, not just for our children, but for ourselves. And then we come across this phrase, this motto, that education is an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. This happy phrase is the most complete and adequate definition of education we possess. It is a great thing to have said it, and our wiser posterity may see in that profound and exquisite remark the fruition of a lifetime of critical effort. Observe how it covers the question from the 3 conceivable points of view. Subjectively, in the child, education is a life. Objectively, as affecting the child, education is a discipline. Relatively, if we may introduce a third term as regards the environment of the child, education is an atmosphere. So Charlotte tells us to approach education from those 3 points of view. And today we're going to dive in and look at the first one, which is education is an atmosphere. When we say that education is an atmosphere, we do not mean that a child should be isolated in what may be called a child environment, especially adapted and prepared, but that we should take into account the educational value of his natural home atmosphere, both as regards persons and things, and should let him live freely among his proper conditions. It stultifies a child to bring down his world to the child's level. So in this principle, Charlotte is talking about the home atmosphere, and her main writings are in Volume 6, Chapter 6, but I honestly don't feel like she explains the concept quite enough in Volume 6, so I'm also going to talk about a chapter in Volume 2, Chapter 4. And now both of those chapters will be available for you to download as a free PDF over on the Plenary website, and I'll put a link to that in the description. But basically, Charlotte is saying that we as parents are responsible for the natural environment of the home. It is not an environment of artificial relations carefully constructed, but an atmosphere which nobody has been at pains to constitute. It is there, about the child, his natural element, precisely as the atmosphere of the earth is about us. It is thrown off, as it were, from persons and things, stirred by events, sweetened by love, ventilated, kept in motion by the regulated action of common sense. And she's also saying that we shouldn't necessarily protect our children from the harshness of life, that they need to experience the good and the bad. We certainly may use atmosphere as an instrument of education, but there are prohibitions, for ourselves rather than for children. Perhaps the chief of these is that no artificial element be introduced, no sprinkling with rose water, softening with cushions. Children must face life as it is. If their parents are anxious and perturbed, children feel it in the air. Mummy, are you going to cry this time? Are you? and a child's hug tries to take away the trouble. By these things children live, and we may not keep them in glass cases. And she uses an analogy about a scientist who had done some experiments on plants, and she likens the plants to children, and she uses this analogy to say that we should not be wrapping our children up and protecting them in a bubble. A plant carefully protected under glass from outside shocks looks sleek and flourishing, but its higher nervous function is then found to be atrophied. But when a succession of blows, in the form of electric shocks, is rained on this effete and bloated specimen, the shocks themselves create nervous channels and arouse anew the deteriorated nature. Is it not the shocks of adversity and not cotton wool protection that evolve true manhood? Okay, so far the atmosphere must be natural and not a bubble. So what makes up a natural atmosphere? Well, Charlotte says it is the ideas that emanate from within a home. It rests with parents not only to give their children birth into the life of intelligence and moral power, but to sustain the higher life which they have born. Now that life, which we call education, receives only one kind of sustenance. It grows upon ideas. But what is an idea? A live thing of the mind, according to the older philosophers, from Plato to Bacon, from Bacon to Coleridge. We say of an idea that it strikes us, impresses us, seizes us, takes possession of us, rules us. And our common speech is, as usual, truer to fact than the conscious thought which it expresses. We do not in the least exaggerate in ascribing this sort of action and power to an idea. We form an ideal, a, so to speak, embodied idea, and our ideal exercises the very strongest formative influence upon us. Why do you devote yourself to this pursuit, that cause? Because 20 years ago such and such an idea struck me, is the sort of history which might be given of every purposeful life. Every life devoted to the working out of an idea. Now, is it not marvelous that recognizing as we do the potency of ideas, both the word and the conception it covers enter so little into our thought of education? So what ideas are important in your home? Because like habits, there is no escaping atmosphere. Our children are always learning whether we want them to be learning that particular thing or not. And that is why Charlotte says that it's very important that the ideas within our homes are directing our children toward things that are lovely, honest, and of good report. The idea may exist in a clear, distinct, definite form, or it may be a mere instinct, a vague appetency towards something, like the impulse which fills the young poet's eyes with tears he knows not why. To excite this appetency towards something, toward things lovely, honest, and of good report, is the earliest and most important ministry of the educator. How shall these indefinite ideas which manifest themselves in appetency be imparted? They are not to be given of set purpose nor taken at set times. They are held in that thought environment which surrounds the child as an atmosphere, which he breathes as his breath of life, and this atmosphere in which the child inspires his unconscious ideas of right living emanates from his parents. Every look of gentleness and tone of reverence, every word of kindness and act of help passes into the thought environment, the very atmosphere which the child breathes. He does not think of these things, may never think of them, but all his life long they excite that vague appetency towards something out of which most of his actions spring. Oh, wonderful and dreadful presence of the little child in the midst. So she calls atmosphere a thought environment, and I really, really love that description because it isn't about the things in your home. It isn't about making your home picture perfect like all those beautiful photos that you see on Instagram and Pinterest. It's really more about the thoughts and the ideas in your home. So what ideas are most prevalent in your home, and are they the kinds of ideas that are lovely, and of good report. That he should take direction and inspiration from all the casual life about him should make our poor words and ways the starting point from which and in the direction of which he develops. Well, this is a thought to make the best of us hold our breath. There is no way of escape for parents. They must needs be as inspirers to their children, because about them hangs, as its atmosphere about a planet, the thought environment of the child. So it's really up to you. And I know that sometimes it feels overwhelming to think that you are responsible for the environment of your home, but to me it's really simple, and I hope it will be simple for you too, because I want to encourage you to just don't worry about the things. Instead, think about the ideas, the thoughts that are emanating in your home. What thoughts are your children hearing? What ideas are important in your home? Think about things like love and gentleness and the respect for others as persons, and the rest of it really does take care of itself. And if you're having a bad day, one of my favorite mottos for my home comes from a contemporary author that I really like, and her motto is "Only love today." And so many days I will repeat that to myself, especially if I'm having a bad day. Only love today. And sometimes I fail, but many times I succeed, and you can too. So keep that in your mind as you go forward for the next couple of weeks, and think about this principle as your homework, that the atmosphere in your home is about ideas and thoughts, and maybe you want to make that your motto as well. Only love today. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to click that little bell for notifications so that you'll know every time a new video comes out in the Principles series. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to chat with you soon.